Hey, real quick, before we get into that episode, do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. That way you don't miss out on any marketing nuggets. Enjoy the show.
I'm not going to just hire some random people off Upwork. All my talent is going to stay local. And the reason why I was able to make that decision was based off my pillars that I have already set in place. Starting off with that hard work up front will help you make better decisions in the long term and also be consistent.
Hi, I'm Josh Owen. As the owner of a video marketing company in New Orleans, I've been on the quest to learn everything I can about marketing. Everyone has a different style, different strategy, and a different experience. Is there a wrong way to do it? A right way to do it? Let's find out together as we make marketing make sense. Welcome everybody to a fantastic episode of Make Marketing Make Sense. Today I'm joined by Sara Scioneaux, as she goes by, founder of Florence Creative, which, has fantastic origins, really coming out the gate swinging here. Today, we're here to talk all about branding for startups. Welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Wow, I can see that. The excitement is just oozing off your face. Well, without further ado, because I know you have been in around startups for a while now. Man, I just shouted. That was wild. But, essential steps. What are the key core steps? We're diving right in there. When we're talking about like building a brand, like what are you thinking about? What's going on in your mind for a startup to start building a brand? Because a lot of us are like, what is a brand? How do I get there? Like, it's a lot of confusion.
Right. Well, yeah. There's also, that's part of it is what even is a brand.
Yeah.
Because a brand is very different from marketing or advertising or, anything like that. A brand is truly a company's identity and how it's how people talk about them and how people perceive them. But whenever the first thing that startups or as a brand in general, the first thing that you want to consider when building that is who is your target audience. That's the foundation. Because if you don't know who you're building the brand for, you don't know where to start. You don't even know what the name is going to be. You don't know how to properly relay what your product or service is. So really starting with the foundation of who is your target audience. And not only just, what are those demographic points? Are they primarily female, male, age group, location, but also what are their values? What do they care about? What do they do in their spare time?
I think a lot of people miss that step. Like a lot of people don't go the extra mile and say, well, yeah, I know who they are, but like, what do they care about?
Exactly.
Because your product needs to speak to that, I'm assuming, in the brand. Right?
Exactly. The values and, what somebody cares about and how they view the world is going to be entirely different based on, who that target audience is. So say if your product is for, Southern conservers in their 50s.
All right.
Like,
I love that. All right. What are they into these days?
You don't know. But that's going to be, how you present your brand, how you talk about it, how it looks. Everything about it is going to be presented entirely different if your product or service is going to be for, 30-year-old early adopters in San Francisco. You can't, it's not going to work.
Let me tell you,
if you try,
I feel like those two might be at odds with each other at this point.
Indeed, but...
Well, and, my main question, though, about that is how, because, like, branding, I know, is a term that's very universal across all brands. But specifically with startups, what makes them so unique? Having worked with several startups, and building a brand, what are some of the unique steps that they need to take when they're starting their brand?
Well, and maybe it's not the initial step that a startup takes, but being in that startup culture, we love to use the word pivot. Things are always going to change. You always have to adapt. It's going to be an evolution.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
So always being open and always being open to change and maneuver and pivot.
Do you think because of the pivot culture, do you think it's good to be bold? Like, I guess like you could go with your branding and be very bold with it and just say like, this is who we are, this is what we're about, and then make changes from there, or do you think it's better to kind of be more subtle and kind of be like, okay, we don't have like a huge strong branding we're coming out with, but we're going to make slight changes over time, and then we go bold with it after we've really figured out who we are?
So I wouldn't say that like bold or subtle are either the way to go, but it's really going to be about consistency. So, that boldness is more so going to have to do with who your target audience is, or, who you are doing this for. But really, out of the gate is being consistent about who you are. And even if that changes over time, you can still have a consistent message that still develops.
Gotcha.
So really consistency is going to be what's key there. And that's what is going to drive essentially like authority and authenticity over time.
Yeah.
So being consistent, I would say, is
What goes into that consistency is what I'm curious about. I mean, one of the terms that always comes up is market research. Like, how does, what does it mean to be consistent with your brand? Obviously it's like, well, I need to have the same branding everywhere, but it's like, I'm sure you mean something else more than just that. And so what does consistency mean? And like, at what point do you make changes based off your market research?
Absolutely. So I'm going to re-say the first part of that, and
Yes.
then after I answer that, go back to the second part.
So many things. I'm like, here's all. I just like, I threw the ham sandwich and the side salad all at once. You just like, that's too much.
I know, I need
that's
my
too much to chow down
appetizer
on. God dang. Well, it's okay. You got it though. I believe in you.
Okay. No, seriously, go back and say. Seriously.
Oh, I thought you were saying like, I'm gonna go back. You're saying
no.
like as in like me, Sarah. I'm gonna go back and
No,
but
Josh.
you're encouraging me now.
I'm asking you. Yes,
you're asking
please.
me.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. So for consistency. So just talking about consistency.
Okay.
What are the ways to be consistent?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the first considerations that people have or what you kind of first think of being consistent is using the correct logos, or using your logo in the correct way, using your fonts, using your colors, and you do want to do that. That's how people are going to recognize who you are. But being consistent in how you say things, being consistent in what that language sounds like, how that feels. So if you are talking to a group of people and you've set yourself in a say if you set yourself in like a really fun, outgoing kind of way, even whenever your brand develops over time, that kind of core isn't essentially going to change how you talk, unless you need to do rebrand. But we'll get into that.
No.
But if you have developed this, very like fun, outgoing. I'm thinking about like companies like, or a company like MailChimp. The way that they present themselves is very fun. So if you then all of a sudden like put out this very like weird, stark, very serious messaging, it's not going to align. It's not going to feel like the brand. So making sure that not only the look and feel, but how you sound. I mean, even how it smells, how it tastes.
Oh wow!
Oh,
all right.
yeah.
Oh man! All right.
I know.
MailChimp. I'm assuming they kind of have like a banana flavor. So,
See,
so
you have an idea of what they smell like.
That's true. But I guess what I want to dive in on there more too is because man, I really got sidetracked by those bananas. What did you just say? Oh, what was it?
I know. Now we're to the entree.
It was like bananas. It was there was something I really wanted to dig in there for people. But we'll come back to it because I guess like going back in there is for market research based on that. Oh, yeah, it has to do with that. Having to do with the change.
Pivoting.
Well, anyway, so you're doing this consistency, but you're also, I think, with as a business, you're also being bombarded, especially entrepreneurs and startups. I think one of the biggest things that can come across as an entrepreneur is you're seeing all these different roads and you're taking all these different avenues because everything is an option at this point.
Right.
You know, how do you also know, like, well, I need to be consistent, but then I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that, I want to do this. Like, you know, how do you pare down as well and make sure you're not stepping out of the bounds? How do you keep that consistency alive?
Ooh. That's a good question. I mean, and a lot of that comes to in that initial, so after you do your like market research and defining who your audience is, defining who your company is for, really kind of like the next steps of branding are going to be determining, you know, your mission, vision, values. And so one thing that I have done in my own business is I've set my 4 pillars. And so whenever I'm approached with these decisions of like, oh, you know, because world is your oyster. You can, I mean, there's so many different avenues, especially, I mean, like it's 2024, like options are endless. But always coming back to your pillars and using those as a guide to make decisions and keep you in line is going to be one of the best ways to know how to make those, or, you know, what the decision is to make, or you know what that answer is.
So you're not walking around in the dark.
And that's what helps keep you consistent as well, is, you know, always coming back to that. You know, I personally, because I'm a growing firm, I got some advice that was like, oh, hey, you know, just hire some people on Upwork. And I came back to my pillars where I was like, I know that that has worked for some people. I know that that could work. But is that what I actually want to do? Is that where, is that the value of my business? Where my business, I want to better the economy of New Orleans and kind of help change the brand of New Orleans. Like, we're not just a party place. We are a place that can be innovative and creative. And coming back to that made me realize I'm not going to just hire some random, I'm very talented, but I'm not going to just hire some random people off Upwork. All my talent is going to stay local. And the reason why I was able to make that decision was based off my pillars that I have already set in place. So I think that is one thing that's very important for a brand, is starting off with that hard work up front will help you make better decisions in the long term and also be consistent.
Yeah, which a lot of people, I guess, don't really think about is how branding can help with your internal decision making. Because, like, what you're describing there
100%.
is like it's not just an out facing thing.
Right.
So that's really interesting. And like, but you know, going back into out facing, you know, I mean, this can be an inwards thing too. But you know, how do brands really differentiate themselves? You know, what's the best ways to really get out there and like, you know, and take the market research you've been doing, take some of the, you know, the consistency that you've been building upon. What are the ways that you start to really see true, you know, colors, so to speak, for differentiation?
Right. Well, that is so difficult, or it can feel really daunting in this day and age because there's so much noise out there, and you know, we're constantly getting fed, you know, advertisements on social media, and we're, as humans, getting really great at ignoring them as well. So it has really changed the strategy across the industry of how you talk to your audience. So, and I think really that kind of being able to stand out, if anything, shows the importance of being a true brand rather than just, you know, advertising and throwing dollars into Google and Facebook ads. And I mean, and how the best way to do that is have a story that, and really having a narrative that relates or resonates with that audience. And not only, you know, not only just saying like, we understand you. It's like, we are you. You know, we want the same things as you. So, I mean, that's really going to be the truest way to stand out, is to be authentic. And you're not going to be able to do that by buying Facebook likes or buying Instagram likes. That's not how it happens. One thing is going to be, people don't like this, but it's patience. It's going to take time for it to really develop as well.
Yeah, because, like, how do you really... I guess, like, my question is more so, how do you know you're doing it right? Is more so the real question, you know.
So are we gonna get into measurables?
Yeah, you know, like what is that? You know, what's going on with that? You know, how do we know?
Man, so the short answer is.
Oh, I love short answers.
Short answer is that also people don't like.
Oh man, you're here to stir it up. You're like, I'll crack that whip. All right, tell me what it is.
Short answer is branding is not necessarily something that's measurable. It's qualitative. It's not going to be something that's quantitative.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, your boss or your clients are going to ask, well, how do I know that the brand is working?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard question, or it's a hard question to answer for them, because all of the measurements that you want to give them are usually just going to be vanity metrics that don't really show much. But the qualitative aspect to it is going to be, you know, over time, how have you become a household name in the houses that you want to be spoken about?
Yeah.
How are people talking about your brand?
Yeah.
How are people, you know, I mean, and this is kind of a way you can start to measure it, is what are your Google reviews? Like instead of looking at, you know, how many impressions did I get on this Instagram post?
Yeah.
How many positive Google reviews did we receive? How many people talked about us on Twitter? I refuse to call it X.
Oh, oh no.
We'll get into that too.
Oh.
But where was I going? I got distracted by Musk.
You're on the bus, you know, you're driving down the street, you know, pulled over at
how many people are, you know, without even like tagging you, how many people are talking about you, and in what light are they talking about you? And again, that's something that requires patience, and it's not exactly something that is immediately, you know, quantitative. You can't mark that on a chart. But some of the things that you can look at, again, are, you know, how are people talking about you? Are you getting Google reviews?
Yeah.
Are you getting reviewed? Do you have new traffic on your website that you haven't had before? I mean, take that with a grain of salt, because that can also be due to other campaigns that you have going on. But, you know, how many people are going into Google and Googling your brand and not just looking, you know, not for like Comfystone? Are people looking up, you know, film production in New Orleans or podcast production in New Orleans? Are they looking up Comfystone? You know, that's one of the ways to gauge
when you're exceeding the thing that you're about.
Exactly. So that's one way to, you know, kind of measure it is, you know, are people looking for you specifically and not just what you do?
Yeah. That's interesting. What about also like just knowing too internally if people understand who you are versus like, you know, like surveying, I guess would be the term. Like, is that another metric that you would suggest people use?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, surveying can be a little bit like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And people don't always want to give you the honest answer. So definitely making it...
You got to do like incognito.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you can make it anonymous, that generally helps. But yeah, absolutely. Like pushing out surveys, keep it short, keep it sweet. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten emails from, you know, Amazon or, you know, whoever that just ask 1 to 10. Where do you rank us? Adobe does it to me all the time. 1 to 10, where do you rank us? Would you recommend us to others? So if you can do just that alone, you can kind of get an idea of customer satisfaction, which overall ties into branding as well.
And then like feeding a little extra questions there about. Is that too much?
If you're willing to give people money or you're willing to give them things, sure.
You have very low faith in people.
Oh my God, I've been doing this for like 6 years.
Okay, fair enough. Well, last question is, so if a startup is starting right now, what would you say should be their primary focus when it comes to like their brand? They're starting up, they've got, you know, their idea, they've got a name, but they're really like, you know, they're figuring out like, what are my next steps? Or maybe it's a startup that has just started up for a couple months now and is like questioning like, am I doing this right? What would you say to them, to those people out there? Words of wisdom, advice from Sara Scioneaux. It doesn't roll off the tongue nice though. Anyway, continue.
Does or does not?
Does.
Oh, okay.
It does. Sara Scioneaux, Sara Scioneaux, it's like, whoosh.
Yeah. Man, advice for startups or brand advice for startups. I feel like I've already given some of it, but
yeah, tie it all up. This is our ribbon. This is our put a bow on it moment.
Put the bow on it. Yeah, I mean, my advice to startups would be, really develop your pillars and figure out who you are and who you represent. And it's going to unfold from there. From there, you can decide what your colors are. Don't get hung up on how the logo looks. You can always adjust it later. Don't get hung up on the small things. We can pivot later. It's a development. It's an evolution. I mean, if you go back and look at some of the largest brands, they don't have the same logo now that they started with. Don't get hung up on that. But what they do have is they still have the same values. I mean, they might have tweaked it a little bit here and there, but their core remains the same. So don't get hung up on those little details. That'll get worked out later as your company develops.
Well, and I have a feeling that you can help them on that journey.
Can.
And if they wanted to do that with you, where would they be able to find you online?
Oh my gosh, you can go to www.flowcreativemarketing.com.
Is that Flow, F-L-O?
F-L-O. That.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And all the socials, same thing?
All the socials, same thing.
Nice.
Consistency.
You heard it here first, folks. Get consistent, get Sara, and you're on your way. We'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much, Sara.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into the show. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. This episode of Make Marketing Make Sense is brought to you by Comfystone. If your business needs organic social media video content, video ads, or video podcasting, hit up Comfystone at comfystone.com and follow Comfystone on Instagram and TikTok. Until next time, this is Make Marketing Make Sense.